Yeah, for sure. So next we have how to get from idea to contribution in minutes. That's presented by one of our own product managers at GitHub, Sasha Rosenbaum, who chairs Delivery Conf, which is a conference centered around CI and CD. She's an organizer of DevOps Days in Chicago and has experience in development, operations, consulting, and cloud architecture. So without further ado, Sasha, take it away.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to GitHub Satellite. I'm so happy you're able to join us from wherever you are in the world today. And like Cheetah said, my name is Sasha Rosenbaum. I work for GitHub. You can find me on GitHub as DivineOps, as well as on Twitter by the same username. And I have some pretty excited new feature to talk about today. But before that, I also actually have some great news about you. So, congratulations. Actually, you just got a new job, and that is completely awesome. And since you're a developer, that means that you get to do coding straight away, right? Well, usually that's not how it works. Usually, first you need to do a couple of things. So, first you need to get a developer machine, and that might take a little while. Then you need to get access to source control and all the internal tools and all the stuff that you need to get to your projects. Then you need to install your developer tools. And even if your machine came with the developer tools pre-installed, usually you need to do a lot of configuration to get them just the right way. Right? And then, of course, you need to install all of your dependencies. And these sometimes can take a while just before you even get to compile your project. Sometimes you get to spend quite a while getting it all set up. So, how long usually does it take before you can actually write your first line of code? Well, let's say if it took 2 hours, that would be great. Usually, offices come with pretty nice coffee machines, and I'm a coffee person, so I don't mind an extra cup of coffee. But from my personal experience, in no organization did it take 2 hours for me to just be able to get started. Maybe it takes 2 days. That's okay. I can consume a little bit more coffee, maybe read a handbook and, understand the organization better. That's great. But sometimes we're getting more like into 2 weeks. That's a more realistic time frame. And by that time, I'm like, oh wow, I'm consuming a lot of coffee without actually contributing anything of value to my projects that I'm supposed to be working on. Right. And then sometimes in some organizations, it can actually even take longer for you to even get productive. And this is a problem that at GitHub we've been thinking about for a while. And this was our dream to enable developers to work from anywhere and just be able to get started right away. Right. So today, if you went to Nat's keynote, you might already know what's coming up. But today, we have a solution to that problem. And that solution is called Codespaces. So Codespaces is cloud-based, full-powered developer environment, which you can work on from anywhere inside your browser. It is hosted by GitHub and powered by VS Code, and you can bring all of your dependencies and all of your tools right with you so you can get productive right away. And that sounds amazing, but also kind of sounds like magic. So that you believe me, I'm going to actually demonstrate some of that goodness. So let's get into a demo, and I'm going to do the demo live. So hopefully it all works just fine. All right. So let me go right here. So my coworker, Matt, has been working on this application where he has written some haikus for his dog. And I've been meaning to contribute to that application for actually a little while, but I kind of haven't gotten around to it. So now I've forked the repository and I've actually already created a code space. So you will notice that my buttons here changed a little bit. So now when I go in here, I can actually see the open in code spaces. And then I can click on here since I already have one existing. So this will just take us a moment. If you're starting from scratch, it might take us a little bit longer, but since we already have one, we're just starting it up. So, all right, we landed right here, and you can see it's a simple node application. So since I want to make a change, usually I just would like to get started by seeing if the app really works. So I'm just going to come into the terminal and do node non-start. And then I can browse to my remote explorer from right here and see that we have forwarded port 3000 for this application. So let's see if I can browse right to it. All right, this is cool. So this is Matt's lovely dog. It's amazing, and I think it's enjoying quarantine quite a bit. So I'm gonna add a haiku now for June so she can have a new friend. So I'm gonna come into haikus and I'm gonna make a change right here. So bear with me 1 second while I bring in a new haiku. All right, there we go. And then you will notice that all of the haikus came with images, so we probably need an image to go with it. So let's just go in here and see if we can find a good image for this. Now, I'm more of a cat person, so with that, we're going to bring a cat friend for June. All right, so let's just see if any of our changes actually worked. All right, so we got it right here. So if you notice, I just had a full experience of developing code right online, right in my browser. I didn't have to install any tools, and all of my application just worked right away. So to me, this is amazing, and this means that you can do so many things without actually owning a super powerful developer machine. So let's just go back into the presentation and talk a little bit about the use cases that we could potentially address with code spaces. So the first and near and dear to our hearts is contributing to open source, right? And a lot of times when you come across an open source project and you want to contribute, and then you take a look at all the dependencies and you realize that it would take you like a day to just get it up and running. And by that time, your desire to contribute is kind of gone, right? Or maybe you just like on the go somewhere and then you notice that this project is like has a vulnerability reported and you would like to really like the fix maybe is just an upgrade of a version and it would really take just a minute or two and you would like to contribute it right there, but you're unable to do that because you don't have your developer machine with you. Well, with code spaces, you are able to contribute right from your browser from absolutely anywhere. Also, if you are in a country where you might not have access to strong developer machines, you can have that with code spaces. So long as you have access to the internet and to the browser, you'll be able to develop using code spaces. And then, of course, if we come into new team collaboration, we just saw that in that case where I got a new job, I could be starting to contribute within minutes rather than within weeks. And that's an incredible time savings. And then this happens quite a bit. I might be developing something on a branch and my changes might not be in a good shape to commit yet. And then I get a ping from a coworker asking me to actually go and review his code so it can go into production. And I am unable to review that pull request or switch a branch or make any changes there. But with code spaces, I could actually just go into a separate environment and contribute anything that I needed. And then, of course, conflicting dependencies. So maybe I have a package version that conflicts between two projects that actually happens, and it gets very hairy to deal with that on a single machine. Or maybe I just don't want to install a MongoDB driver on my local machine. Right? With code spaces, I can do this without actually polluting my development environment. And then, of course, as a company, you can choose to have your entire team work entirely in code spaces so that you don't have to provision an expensive development machine. machines. And if your developers switch between projects, they can bring their development environment, quote unquote, with them and develop on the project that is relevant right now. So how do you get started with all the goodness? So first of all, you have to enroll in beta. This product is now in beta, and so you are able to sign up today for the beta. And then if you do, you'll be able to just come into your familiar GitHub landing page for a repository and get into Open with Code Spaces, and then it will automatically spin up a new code space for you. And it will automatically spin up a new container so that there is a default image, and it will provision it for you. So you don't actually have to do anything. So it will do a spin up screen for a minute, and then you will land in a page that looks approximately like this. Right? So without any configuration, I don't have anything in here that is very interesting. It's just a very simple Node application. I'm all about simple Node applications today. So let's just do another demo of something that we can do with code spaces. So let me switch context once again. In the end, I'm going to go into another repo. So this is yet another simple Node application, and I'm going to open it in a code space. So in terms of getting started with this, we just said that we could just get started by clicking like Open with Codespace, and it'll automatically provision a new container for you. But you could also configure your environment to look exactly the way you want it, right? So I'm going to explore a little bit of the things that you can do with this. So you will notice that there's a dev container folder in here. And then in here, we have a couple of files. So we have a Docker file. And in this case, I'm just pulling a Microsoft container image. Then I'm configuring Node user so I don't have to run with a default root. And then I am just installing a single dependency. I'm planning to use MySQL in this application. So I'm just installing it in the container so that it's installed in my developer environment. And so I could bring all of my dependencies, bake them into a Docker image that I'm using, and then use them in my application. And then more importantly, there is a dev container file, so I can get configuration set up here as well. So I have the Docker file configured, so which Docker file I'm looking at. I have an app port that is open, and I don't have to open any ports, but if I'm opening a port, so in this application, I'm opening 3000. Then I'm configuring which remote user I'm going to run with, and then I'm configuring what my bash is. So another thing I can do is to choose a post create command. So for the post create command, and you can see that I can run multiple ones or I can run a script, but I can basically do npm install, or in this case, I'm installing NodeMon so I can monitor changes, right? So my app, when it starts up in the code space, comes fully baked with things I need. And then of course, you can install VS Code extensions. So all your favorite VS Code extensions that you know and love can come with you into this online editor because it's powered by VS Code. And then if you've been paying attention, you might have also noticed that my terminal here is a little bit custom. So it's actually like very cool because I can also do interesting things like this. So let me just do git checkout new branch. So you see that I automatically see which branch I'm actually currently on, which is super helpful for me to know which I'm going to contribute to, so that I don't end up contributing to a wrong branch. And then where this configuration comes from is a public repository. Oh, all right. Maybe it will go away in a second. Is a public repository called .files. So I have my .files in here, and I have a bash prompt script in here, which configures what my prompt actually looks like. So I have all of my things configured, so which branch I'm looking at and what color, and what comes up as a prompt. So if you have a .files repo, that configuration can come fully with you, and it spins up automatically with code spaces. And then another super cool thing that I can do right from here is I can launch a debugger. So Let me just switch to a file that might have something more interesting to look at. So, and I'm going to actually put a breakpoint on here. And then I'm going to click on Launch Debugger. All right, so it launched the debugger, and I can actually go to this URL from right here. So let's see. All right, so we got into increasingly basic homepage, and I happen to know that there is a URL for an API call, so I'm just going to type it in. Okay, so it stopped at a breakpoint. Let's see. All right, so it did stop at a breakpoint, and I have JS data in here, so that doesn't help me very much. What I really would like to see is the characters, and I'm watching that variable. So let's just make one step. All right, so now I got the characters, and I can browse what is happening in the characters so I can see that the data is correct when it's coming through. And then I just let it run. Ah, no, damn. Okay. So we let it run, so it responded correctly. So this way we can start a debugger fully from our code space and actually have a fully powered editor in our browser. Again, I didn't have to get anything installed. I didn't have to do anything specific. And I just had the whole thing working from my browser. So with that, let me just switch back to my presentation real quick. Okay. So just to reiterate everything that we've talked about, you can configure all your project dependencies directly in your GitHub repository so that it spins up directly with everything that you need. And so as an open source maintainer, for instance, you get to configure your project dependencies so that people who come to contribute can spin up easily instead of spending days on setup, right? And then you can contribute from anywhere, anytime. So if you have a browser and if you have an internet connection, you'll be able to spin up code spaces and contribute to your favorite project. So what can you do today? Well, first of all, you can check out the sign up for beta link. And so you can read a little bit more about code spaces and sign up for beta. And then you can also read our docs about code spaces. And then last but not least, you can read about VS Code dev container docs. So that feature is available today in preview. So you can start playing with this code dev containers right away. So you kind of ramp up on code spaces that way. All right. So with that, thank you very much. And I believe we're going to questions.
Thank you, Sasha. I really, really love that. Super pumped. It's almost like Codespaces is like a dream come true. World-class development environment in the browser powered by VS Code. It comes pre-configured for your environment, all your .dot files, all your Git config, everything is there. If you're in a country where you might not have access to a strong machine, with Codespaces, you can do that as long as you have access to an internet. And with this dev container thing, this is going to usher in a new revolution. The same kind of revolution we've seen in productions with Docker, we're going to see the same revolution in development. And remember, everybody, we've gotten some of your questions teed up and all ready to go. And our first question is going to come from, I'm looking at it now. All right, we've got first questions. Matthew Weir9, GitHub user Matthew Weir9 says, Codespaces seems too good to be true. Sasha, he wants to know, what's the catch? Is there a catch, Sasha?
So there is no catch, I believe, but it is currently in beta. So once you are able to get access, you'll be able to play with it yourself, and you're going to see that it is Alter.
All right, all right. Cheda, you have anything you want to add to that? Do you think there's a catch? Is it a magic?
I don't think there's a catch. I think it might be magic, but if it works, I'll take it. One thing I wanted to bring up is Bunky Penguin asked or stated, I hope this will work on an iPad with VS Code / code server not doing copy and paste nicely on iPad iPad OS on Safari. So I have the same questions. I want to use this on my iPad. So what's your thought process there, Sasha?
Yeah, so if you're able to spin up a browser, you should be able to use code spaces from anywhere, including your iPad. And again, if you try it during the beta, give us your feedback if you see any issues. The other thing that I haven't really had a chance to mention is that you could, if you have a developer machine and you have VS Code installed, you can actually connect to a code space from your desktop and actually also run in a development environment that way. So it's an additional bonus. But again, you don't have to have VS Code installed at all for this to work.
Cool.
Man, I want to try it now.
GitHub user. All right. GitHub user Hansi00 says, how does code spaces handle secrets? For example, you're using a code space to write your code and to debug the code running. You want to provide a secret via an environment variable or something similar, but you don't want that secret to be persisted anywhere online. As per one of the previous talks, how do you provide these values to the code space? How do we do that?
Yeah, so I think in terms of checking it in, the regular GitHub process in terms of checking that secrets haven't been changed, no, haven't been checked in, is going to kick in. So it isn't specific to code space. And in terms of not giving it secrets, I think you should be, mindful about what you save in public variables and configurations.
Cool. We have a lot of
one
questions.
Thing I want to
go ahead, Cheeto.
Yeah, I want to dive deeper on that. Hopping on the persistencies. So how does code spaces handle persistence with your databases and things you're setting up? Are those living forever until you press a button, or do they kind of disappear after X amount of time?
Yeah, so they go into suspension. So obviously it's not going to keep spinning. So if you are not using it for about half an hour, it's going to suspend, but it's going to save the state. And so, for instance, even if you have not committed code, it's still going to be saved there unless you delete it. If you delete it, it goes away. So again, if you have code and you want to commit it to a repository, obviously you want to go to through commit and pull requests and all the normal process.
Awesome.
Cool. We have more questions coming. Okay. So there's a user, I cannot pronounce their name, Anglenesis. Is the code space config persistent across repos, or is it specific to each repo? For instance, let's say I use a specific set of pub links most of the time. Do I need to configure it in each of the code space instances, or is it just persistent across all of them?
So I didn't hear the last part of the question, but
okay, I'll read it again. Let's just read it again so that we're all on the same page.
All right.
Is the code spaces config persistent across repos, or is it specific to each repo? For instance, let's say I use a specific set of plugins most of the time. Do I need to configure it in each code space instance?
Yeah, so it's specific to each repo. I am not able to answer if we're looking into doing it across different repos so that to save you time in terms of across organization. Right now, what it is, it's specific to repo. So if you had the same configuration, then you need to be basically copying it over to a different one, just because a lot of times you do want something different in a different repository. Right. And it's easy enough to basically bring in the same configuration. The dot files are across the entire thing. So my dot files from GitHub basically are persistent across all of my code spaces.
I see. Do you have any other question? You want to chime in, Cheeto? Don't want to talk over you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I waited this time. I was waiting for the gap, waiting for you to kind of punt it over. So with the dot files, so I've heard about them for quite some time. I've continued to kick the can down the road. Can you explain the transition from not using dot files to using dot files?
Yeah, so I don't think I even take full advantage of them myself, right? But you can configure certain things that you like, and then they will basically just happen across all of your repositories, right? So you don't have to keep reconfiguring the same environment over and over. So as for instance, that terminal prompt, I used to actually, every single computer that I get, I used to set up the terminal prompt exactly the way I like it. And now I don't have to do that.
Cool. So is that like a 20-minute kind of transition, or does it take a little bit more time and effort to make the switch?
So I think, especially if it's all open source, so if you copy over and fork it from somebody, you can get started really, really quickly.
Cool.
I think that is what I am going to do to get started. I'm not going to just going to take another person's. We have some other questions coming in, Sasha. This Mr. Mark Rocco says, Sasha, thank you so much for the presentation. Question: can I run two instances of the editor connected using the same container? For example, can I spin up a RESTful API backend in one instance and front end in another, but kind of connected, so I can debug both the front end and the back end at the same time? It's an excellent question.
So it is an excellent question. I don't have an answer to that, but Allison, who was in the keynote today, is also answering the question in the discussion. So she might be able to answer that question for you.
That would be awesome if we could get that to happen. Shado, before I step over you again, do you have any other questions?
Yeah. So it seems that CodeSpaces is going to be absolutely simple to use on the kind of consumer side of things. But what's it like setting up the configuration? Is that pretty simple, or require a little bit more expertise?
Yeah. So did you see me? Like I could get started right away from nothing at all. So as long as you get access to it, you can get started by simply clicking a button. Now, if you want to figure out something quote unquote smarter to do with the code space and have your specific configuration set up, then probably you need to read the docs.
Cool. Back to you, Emoji.
Okay. And where can we sign up for beta again? Where can we sign up for the beta?
Yeah, so maybe that's a good idea to have these links. So the first link is where you can say request early access. So if anyone wants to,
thank you so much. Yeah. Yes. So everybody, you can see where you can sign up for the beta. I'm going to go use CodeSpaces. It's like, it's fun. It's like a dream come true. So thank you to everybody at the team who made this happen. And that is the end of our Q&A. And remember, she's going to continue in discussions.
All right.